If you thought things were bad now, hold on to your hats. Prices are about to go crazy again, and most people are going to get caught completely off guard, but not you. Today, I'm breaking down 3 critical food categories you need to buy now before they skyrocket or disappear. Hey guys, it's Jera with Get Prepared. In 2020, the world woke up to why preparedness matters, and things are shifting again. Being prepared is no longer just about emergencies and disasters, it's become about everyday survival. We've got a serious problem on our hands. If you thought things were already bad, prices are about to skyrocket, and supply on a lot of things is going to get a lot tighter. Preparedness now isn't just about emergencies that may or may not happen, although we know they will. It's about making sure your family will eat tomorrow, next month, next year. Budgets are stretched to the breaking point, like they can't take any more, but they're about to get tighter. So you need to fill those pantries now as best you can. What you do right now is critical because I believe we're about to see prices like we've never seen before on a lot of things. I'll be talking about a lot of these things over the next several weeks, so make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. But there's a few items that I'm going to start with today, and I'm going to break down 3 very impactful food categories. So let's jump in. The first thing that I would be thinking about right now is eggs, and this one's a little bit different from a lot of what you're probably seeing right now. I'm not putting eggs on this list because they're skyrocketing in price. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. Egg prices are way down, and that's exactly why I think they're worth paying attention to. Most people look at things that are already high in price and that are getting higher in price, but you can actually double down your effort by seeking out those things that have dropped or are dropping. And this is one of those moments where preparedness is not just about buying before something disappears. Sometimes it's about buying when the price is in your favor. Buy low. It's good advice. Eggs are one of the most useful protein sources that most families buy. And protein is vital in the prepper pantry. We know that. But eggs are also very volatile in both price and supply. We have totally seen how quickly egg prices can swing when there's disease issues in flock, supply problems, high feed costs, and sudden changes in production, and then how quickly the shelves can empty and limits can be put in place. Right now, we're actually in a rebound phase from farmers replenishing their flocks that they were lost due to avian influenza outbreaks, but feed costs are about to skyrocket because there is a delay in a lot of things. You probably have heard that. Right now, farmers and feed suppliers, they're still working off the last of a previous harvest. And I know, we heard that prices were going to rise, but when people don't always see that right away, they tend to forget about it. They tend to become complacent, dismissive. But that lag is about to come home to roost. So right now, when eggs are at their lowest, it's a good time to ask, how can I make this price work for me? Now, obviously, fresh eggs are not a long-term shelf-stable food, but there are still ways to take advantage of lower egg prices. There's lots and lots of ways to make eggs last longer. You can freeze them. You don't want to freeze whole eggs in the shell because they'll probably crack and the texture can get kind of weird. But you can crack them into a bowl, scramble them up, freeze them in portion sizes like ice cube trays, silicone muffin cups, things like that work really well for this. Once they're frozen, you can just pop them out and put them all together in a freezer bag or some kind of a freezer container. Some people like to add a pinch of sugar or salt into each egg's worth. They use the eggs with the sugar for sweet dishes like desserts, the salted ones for savory dishes. A good rule of thumb is that 1 large egg is about 3 tablespoons of beaten egg. So if you freeze them in measured portions, makes them that much easier to use later on when you need them. Now, I definitely want to be clear about one thing. Freezers are great. I love my freezers, but I don't consider a freezer or frozen food to be part of a strong emergency preparedness plan. A freezer is wonderful for saving money, and it's wonderful for convenience. It's great for stocking up when things like meat, butter, eggs, vegetables, other foods are on sale. And I say it all the time, not every emergency involves a power outage. Not every situation where you're going to need extra food or need to dip into your food storage is going to be a long-term grid down disaster. And the same does hold true here. But to be truly prepared, we need to prepare for the worst case scenario. We need to be ready for those grid down scenarios by reducing our dependency on our freezers, shifting more food to canned and freeze dried, and having a plan to preserve our frozen food if we do lose power for more than a few hours. So yes, I use my freezer. I think freezers are great. They're a great tool, but I wouldn't build my entire emergency food plan around frozen food or even part of it. I don't care how many generators someone has or how much fuel they think they have stored. In a true long-term power outage, frozen food is still vulnerable. Generators fail, fuel runs out. Things rarely go perfectly. So I use freezer food as one layer of our food storage, not the foundation of a preparedness plan. So how else can we preserve eggs and make them part of our food storage? Some people water glass eggs. You might have heard of that before. Maybe you do that. Water glassing is an old-fashioned preservation method that uses clean, unwashed, freshly laid eggs. They're stored in a large jar with a lime water solution to help seal the shell and slow down spoilage so they can last at room temperature for a year or more. A lot of homesteaders still do this, and people have used water glassing for a very long time, but it's one of those methods that not everyone's comfortable with. So if you don't already do it, you're going to need to research for yourself and decide if it's something that you'd like to try. It has to be done just the right way, and it's not foolproof. So I'm not telling you to go out and water glass, dozens of eggs today, but it is worth knowing that that is an option some people use to preserve eggs. Of course, eggs can also be dehydrated, and of course, they can be freeze-dried. So if you have a dehydrator or you have a home freeze dryer and you're comfortable doing eggs yourself, then that's another option. But eggs are one of those foods where you do need to be very careful. You need to understand food safety, moisture levels, storage conditions, packaging, all of that. Dehydrated eggs are cheaper and easier to do for most people, but they don't have that same long shelf life as commercially freeze-dried eggs or even home freeze-dried for that matter, especially if they're just stored at room temperature. So this is kind of more like a short to medium term pantry item, not a 25-year emergency food. And a lot of people don't feel confident in dehydrated eggs staying safe. Freeze-dried eggs can last a lot longer when they're properly processed and packaged. But even then, quality can vary a lot. If you talk to anyone who's freeze-dried their own eggs, you'll probably usually find a wide range of experience from different people. People who thought they came out great and people who thought they just couldn't get them right. They couldn't stomach them. So it really depends. Personally, I honestly prefer to buy my eggs already done, already freeze-dried for me, packaged up for the long term. I have a freeze dryer, I have several dehydrators, but time is a huge factor for me. And when it comes to eggs, I'd really rather prefer to just have a commercially prepared option that's tested, packaged properly, and just ready to go without me having to stress over it. And the one I use actually uses a special process that can't really be duplicated at home. So it makes the best eggs, really, honestly, because scrambled up, they taste just like fresh eggs. I know that a lot of people hear shelf-stable powdered eggs and they kind of go, ew, because they think that it's not real eggs or that there's a bunch of extra junk in them or they're just not good. And that is true of some shelf-stable egg products, but the one that I use it's just eggs, nothing else. But the real difference comes from the way that they process them. It really maintains the quality and the nutrition of the fresh eggs so they still taste amazing. Because there's a lot of shelf-stable egg products out there that don't taste amazing. And most of them work fine for baking, like if you're putting an egg or two's worth in like a cake mix or something, but for eating alone as eggs, they just don't cut it. And for me, it's something that if I'm going to be taking up space in my pantry and money in my budget, it has to be good for both. Are they more expensive than just buying fresh eggs? Yes, of course they are. Or at least it seems expensive compared to fresh eggs on sale at the grocery store. But that's not really comparing apples to apples. You're not just paying for eggs. You're paying for the processing, the packaging, the shelf life, the convenience, and the fact that you have high quality, long-term protein on the shelf that is safe, that doesn't depend on the grid. Something that's shelf stable for years, prepared and packaged to last for years safely with guidelines and quality standards that are just much more reliable. You pay more for these things. There's a trade-off, just like with anything else. And actually, when you compare shelf-stable eggs to a lot of other shelf-stable proteins, it's actually one of the least expensive options per serving of protein when you're looking at animal proteins, which are your complete proteins. Freeze-dried meats, canned meats, specialty emergency foods, those can get expensive really quickly. And usually they cost a lot more per serving of protein, per protein serving than shelf-stable eggs. Eggs give you a lot of flexibility because they can become breakfast. They can go into baking. They can stretch meals. They can add protein to anything that you store. So my strategy with eggs right now would be layered. While fresh eggs are cheap, buy a little extra and use them. Work them into more meals as a way to replace some of those more expensive animal proteins and meats to help take some of the pressure off your grocery budget. That opens up money for other things. Do breakfast for dinner, fried egg sandwiches, egg salad sandwiches. That's perfect for the warmer weather we've got coming. And keep in mind, eggs do last a lot longer than most people believe that they do. So don't buy into the best by dates. They're going to be good for a long time after that. You can pickle a bunch. And if you're a rebel canner, some people can them scrambled or hard boiled. Freeze some for future use if that makes sense for your household. If you've never frozen eggs before, experiment with it. Try a few, see how you like the results. If you have the equipment and you know what you're doing, you can look into preserving them yourself by either freeze drying or dehydrating, whatever it is that you do. But if you can't, or if you don't trust doing it yourself with eggs, or maybe you don't like the quality of what you've produced, you can't keep up with the amount that you want to store, I would also think about securing at least some commercial shelf-stable eggs in your pantry, because fresh egg prices are low right now, but the egg market can turn fast. It's very volatile. And the companies that make the shelf-stable eggs, they still have to source eggs too, just like we do. So if, or I should probably say when, fresh egg prices spike again, because it's inevitable, it really is, we will see shelf-stable egg products get more expensive too. It happens every time. So right now is the perfect time to buy shelf-stable eggs. I'm going to put a link to the ones that I use down below for anyone who's interested in checking them out. This is the kind of item that we should be buying now when things are calm, rather than waiting until everyone's complaining about egg prices again. The next big thing that I'd be looking at right now is wheat-based foods. This has become an area of concern lately after the latest USDA projections weren't exactly reassuring. But this is one of those categories where we do need to step back and think rationally, because it's not to say that wheat is completely gone or that you need to panic buy flour today. I've seen a lot of wheat warnings going around lately, and some of the information is real. It's good. The US wheat outlook has tightened. The crop projections are lower. The numbers are showing a smaller cushion than we used to have, than we've had in the past. So we definitely shouldn't dismiss it. But also, I don't want that to turn into America is about to run out of bread. Panic never helps the situation. Wheat is a global commodity, so we can't forget to look at the bigger picture. We are fed by a global supply chain. The US grows wheat, imports wheat, exports wheat, and food companies are working with contracts and with inventories that don't show up on your grocery shelf overnight. So there's a delay. There's that delay. So when you hear that US wheat production is projected to be much lower, that matters, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to walk into the store next week and see empty flour shelves or empty bread departments. What it does mean is that we need to watch prices very carefully, and that a little bit of proactive purchasing right now definitely doesn't hurt. Wheat is one of those basic ingredients that quietly touches a lot of the foods that most of us use on a regular basis. It's not just flour, it's bread, pasta, crackers, pancake mix, baking mixes, and a lot of convenience foods that people depend on when they're trying to stretch a tight grocery budget. And it's important to remember that a lot of grocery changes don't happen overnight. They show up slowly, gradually. They sneak up on us. You start to see fewer sales, you see packages shrink, you see the cheap brands disappear first, you see those 10 for 10 pasta deals become fewer and further between. You see wheat-based products quietly become more expensive than they used to be. That's why I think that wheat-based foods are worth buying ahead right now, whenever it's practical. Not because we need to panic, but because looking ahead, planning ahead, and buying before prices jump is smart planning and prudent investing. Pasta is probably the best and easiest place to start, and pasta deserves its own little mention here because pasta is in a kind of a different category from other wheat products. It's usually made from durum wheat, which is called semolina once it's milled into flour, and it's what gives pasta its firm texture. And durum wheat has its kind of own supply issues and weather risks that are independent of other types of wheat. And when durum gets tight, pasta can get more expensive. And then on top of that, some pasta is imported, especially from Italy. And that can add a whole nother layer of cost pressure from tariffs and import charges and shipping and trade issues. So pasta can be affected by wheat prices, but can also be affected by a lot of other issues as well. And this doesn't mean that you need to go buy a boatload of pasta all at once, but pasta is one of those foods that checks a lot of boxes for a prepper pantry. It's relatively inexpensive, even still. It stores well, it's easy to cook, it gives you a lot of calories. It's something that kids usually eat. Everybody loves pasta. It can turn a can of sauce, a little meat, some vegetables, or even just butter and seasonings into an actual meal. And it's so versatile. There is a plethora of different sauce options out there, and they're all shelf stable. So you could eat pasta over and over again without feeling like you're eating the same thing over and over again. Pasta also makes up the bulk of a lot of casseroles and soups and things like that. To be honest, pasta is one of my favorite staple prepper pantry foods. So this is where I think practically, if your family eats pasta, I'd be buying a little extra while prices are still reasonable. Look at spaghetti, macaroni, egg noodles, lasagna noodles, whatever shapes your family usually uses. There's so many endless different pasta shapes. But one thing to keep in mind though is if, like most people, storage space is an issue for your prepping, remember that certain pasta shapes store much more compactly, much more efficiently than others. Cuts like spaghetti and orzo, for instance, they're the most space efficient. A pound of those pastas takes up less space than a pound of a lot of other pasta shapes. Besides pasta, I'd also look at flour and pancake mix, especially. Those are two more just prepper pantry basics that I think are incredibly good to have. And any other wheat-based foods that are part of your normal meals that are storage friendly. Not panic buying, cartfuls of everything, but a few boxes here, a few packages there, at least enough that if prices move this fall or the shelves empty, you're not stuck. And think in meals, not just ingredients. If you buy pasta, make sure you also have sauce, or tomato powder, seasonings, canned meats, freeze-dried meats, vegetables, Parmesan cheese, whatever else you would actually need to turn that pasta into a meal for your family. Next, think about flour. Flour is a pantry essential because with flour, you can make so many other things. You don't have to store or stockpile a ton of different products if you have the ingredients to make them yourself. And flour is a very basic foundational ingredient that can turn into so many other foods. Flour kind of gets a bad rap for not having a super long shelf life, but my experience has been that it does last a whole lot longer than most people think that it will or than they say it will, especially if you're careful about how you store it. Now, this might vary depending on where you live, and there's definitely exceptions like whole wheat flour, but flour should definitely be a plentiful part of pretty much every pantry. And then, of course, we can't forget about wheat berries. These are the true star in the prepper pantry. This is the whole wheat grain before it's ground into flour. They store much longer than ground flour as long as they're stored properly, like anything else, and they are infinitely more nutritious. But of course, you do need a grain mill, and you need to actually know how to use it and how to bake with freshly milled flour because there is a learning curve with that. So for some people, wheat berries are a great preparedness step, and for other people, it just kind of turns into a bucket of good intentions sitting in the corner. Don't let that be you. Skills are a great way to expand your preparedness. And skills like milling your own flour, like working with freshly milled flour, working with sourdough, things like that are all great skills to work on if you don't already have them mastered. But at the same time, keep in mind that there are other ways that you can actually use wheat berries without grinding it. Whole wheat can be sprouted, it can be cooked as a whole grain, lots of different things you can do with it. My favorite place to buy wheat berries is Azure Standard. They have very good pricing on wheat. Honestly, I think it's probably the best pricing I've ever found. And they're just a wonderful company to work with. They've got a lot of integrity. They've got high quality standards. You can get so many different varieties of wheat in bulk through them. You can also get flour. You can get pasta, a lot of organics. I actually got one of my grain mills through Azure Standard as well. They have so much stuff that it's actually incredible. I'm going to leave a link down below so you can go and check them out because they are a fantastic company to support. And if you create an account, you actually get a link that you can share to spread the word, and you can actually earn money off of your own orders with that. So I definitely highly suggest going to the website, creating an account, and checking that part out because who couldn't use a little free food right now, right? I always come back to this. Buy what you'll use, store what you understand, and build real, complete meals that your family will actually eat, not just random ingredients that give you a false sense of security, make you feel prepared. So with wheat-based foods, I'm not saying panic. I'm saying pay attention. The warning signs are there. And if your family uses a lot of wheat-based products, I'd rather fill those gaps right now while the prices are still somewhat calm. The third category that I'd be checking out right now is cooking oils and fats. And this one might not sound as dramatic or as interesting as eggs or wheat, but it does matter because fats are one of those pantry categories that touches almost every meal. You use it for cooking, baking, frying, sauteing vegetables, making dressings, greasing pans, adding calories, and making basic pantry foods actually taste good and fill you up. A pantry with pasta, rice, beans, flour, and veggies is one thing, but if you don't have the fats that you need to cook with, these meals are going to get a lot harder to live on. And the reason that I'm watching this category right now and bulking up my supply a bit is because there are pressure points coming from several different directions. Let's just look at olive oil as an example because that's a very commonly used oil here. A lot of olive oil that we use in the United States is imported. So we're not just dealing with what happens here, we're dealing with weather, drought, heat, harvest conditions, shipping, tariffs, increasing packaging costs, and global demand. If olive growing regions have a hard year, or if import costs go up, then that's going to show up on our shelves pretty quickly. Then you have the more common cooking oils like soybean oil, vegetable oil, canola oil. If you use them, I know some people steer clear of them, but if you use them, this is important. They're tied to crop production, but they're also tied to demand from other industries like soybean oil, for example. It's not just used for cooking, it's also used in biofuels, for instance. So when more of that supply gets pulled toward fuel production, that can add another layer of pressure. And then, of course, there's animal fats like tallow and lard. Tallow, for instance, is connected to the beef supply. And we already know the situation with the beef supply, how the cattle situation has been really, really tight. When cattle numbers are low and beef gets more expensive, it makes sense that beef fat and tallow can get more expensive too. In fact, it can actually be even harder hit than the meat. So if you use tallow or if you've been thinking about adding it to your pantry, that's something to be paying attention to right now. Now, I'm not saying go and buy gallons and gallons of oil. Oils can go rancid over time, especially if they're stored warm or if they're exposed to light. So this is not a category to just stock blindly, but I do think it's smart to have a reasonable backup supply of the oils and fats that your family actually uses. And this is another area where, in my experience, it does last a lot longer than most people think. And trust me, I definitely push those limits all the time. For me, this is where I think in layers. Have your everyday cooking oil or fat. Have the oil that you like for baking, have something that stores very well. Maybe that's coconut oil, shortening, ghee, lard, tallow. Maybe it's olive oil and avocado oil if that's what your family actually uses. The key is to buy what you'll rotate. Keep it in a cool, dark place. Don't open a bunch of different bottles all at the same time. Watch your dates, and when you buy extra, put the newest bottles behind the older ones so that you're actually using them in order. And this should apply to everything that you store, but it's even more important here. This is one of those categories where I would rather buy before I'm desperate. Because if prices move or if the sales disappear, cooking fats affect a lot of meals really quickly. It's how you cook the eggs. It's how you fry the pancakes. It's how you saute the vegetables. It's how you make pasta into a real meal. It's how you add calories and satisfaction to basic pantry foods. So while everybody's talking about the obvious things, I'd be quietly checking my oils and fats too. We are going to be feeling the squeeze, folks. It's not just these items that I talked about today, but if you think about these foods, they are foundational. Think about how many different foods you eat that contain one or more of these ingredients. Think about how these three can be used together to make many, many different foods. And think about what a huge gap it would leave in your food supply if one of these were suddenly missing from the shelves entirely. Now is the time to move and to act in whatever capacity you can and whatever capacity you need to. Maybe you're just getting started and you need to build food security for your family from the ground up. Or maybe you've been at this for years and it's really just about topping off and rounding out. Maybe you've got a comfortable budget and you can stock quickly. Or maybe you struggle a little bit more day to day and you've got to stretch a shoestring budget just to be able to add one thing here and one thing there. The pace doesn't matter and the scale doesn't matter, but taking action does. Whatever that means for you. It is not going to be any easier 6 months from now. Whatever you can do now is going to save you down the road, probably in more ways than one. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a bread emoji down in the comments. And you're going to find another video right up here that you can watch for some more timely prepping tips, and I'll see you there. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.